I thought my husband was working late, but the truth destroyed my world the night everything changed. People say that trust is the foundation of every marriage. I believe that. For 8 years, I believed every word my husband ever told me. Every late meeting. Every business trip. Every missed dinner. I'm sorry, I'll make it up to you. I never questioned him. Because I loved him. And because I thought he loved me too. I couldn't have been more wrong. It all started on an ordinary Tuesday night. Emma Parker stood in the kitchen preparing dinner while the rain tapped softly against the windows. The house smelled of freshly baked lasagna. Candles flickered on the dining table. Tonight was special. It was their 8th wedding anniversary. She looked at the clock. 7:15 p.m. Her husband, Daniel, had promised to be home by 7. She smiled and checked her phone. No message. No problem, she whispered. He's probably driving. At 7:45, her phone vibrated. Daniel, running late. Emergency meeting. Don't wait for me. Emma sighed. Another late night. She looked at the anniversary cake she had spent 3 hours decorating. Slowly, she blew out the candles herself. This wasn't the first time. Over the past year, Daniel had been coming home later and later. Sometimes after midnight, sometimes not at all. Whenever Emma asked, he always had the same answer. Work has been crazy. She believed him. Why wouldn't she? Daniel had always been a hard-working financial consultant. His clients trusted him. His colleagues admired him. And Emma trusted him more than anyone. Around 10:30 p.m., Emma curled up on the couch with a book. She wasn't really reading. She was waiting. At exactly 11:08 p.m., she heard a car pull into the driveway. Daniel walked inside, looking exhausted. His tie was loose. His sleeves were rolled up. He forced a tired smile. I'm sorry. I know. He kissed her forehead. I'll make it up to you this weekend. Emma smiled back. It's okay. But as he walked past her, she noticed something strange. His shirt carried the faint scent of women's perfume. Not hers. A sweet floral fragrance she had never worn. She frowned for only a second. Maybe someone at the office hugged him goodbye. She pushed the thought away. Trust doesn't survive if you question every little thing. Or so she believed. The next morning, Daniel left early for work. He forgot his second phone. Emma didn't even know he owned one. It was hidden inside the pocket of his laptop bag. As she picked up the bag to move it, a phone slipped onto the floor. The screen lit up. A notification appeared. Sophia Redhart. I already miss you. Last night was perfect. Emma froze. Her heart stopped. She stared at the message, hoping she had misunderstood. Maybe it belonged to someone else. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe. Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone. It wasn't locked. Another message arrived. Don't forget to tell Emily that you'll be working late again tomorrow. Emma's eyes widened. Emily. There was no Emily in Daniel's office. Then she remembered. Emily wasn't a coworker. Emily was the name Daniel used when talking about her during private jokes. He sometimes called Emma M. or Emily. But why would another woman write that? A cold feeling settled in her chest. She opened the message thread. Hundreds of messages. Thousands. Photos. Voice notes. Heart emojis. Weekend plans. Hotel reservations. I love you. I can't wait until we're together forever. Emma felt the room spinning. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a relationship. A long one. She scrolled further back. The oldest messages were 3 years old. 3 years. For nearly half their marriage, Daniel had been living another life. Emma dropped the phone onto the couch. Tears filled her eyes. Everything she believed about her marriage shattered in a single morning. She wanted to confront him immediately. She wanted to scream. She wanted answers. Instead, she remembered something her late grandmother had once told her. Never confront a liar before you know the whole truth. Emma wiped away her tears. No, she whispered to herself. I'm not asking questions. I'm finding answers. She picked up the phone again, then quietly forwarded every message, every photograph, every voice recording, to her own email. If Daniel had been hiding another life, she was going to uncover every secret, no matter how painful the truth turned out to be. Emma looked out the window as Daniel's car disappeared down the street. For the first time in 8 years, she wasn't waiting for her husband to come home. She was preparing to discover who he really was. and she had no idea that this single message would lead her into a secret far darker than an affair. The woman in the red coat. Emma didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the messages on Daniel's hidden phone. Last night was perfect. I can't wait until we're together forever. 3 years. For 3 years, she had shared a home with a man who had been living a second life. But tears wouldn't help her. The truth would. At 6 o'clock the next morning, Daniel walked into the kitchen dressed for work. He smiled as if nothing had happened. "Morning, sweetheart." Emma forced a smile. "Morning. Everything okay?" She nodded. "Just didn't sleep well." Daniel kissed her on the forehead, grabbed his briefcase, and left the house. Emma waited exactly 30 seconds. Then she picked up her car keys. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she whispered. "But today, I'm following you." Keeping a safe distance, Emma drove behind her husband's black SUV through the busy morning traffic. She expected him to head toward his office downtown. Instead, he turned in the opposite direction. Emma frowned. "Where are you going?" 20 minutes later, Daniel parked outside a quiet cafe on the edge of the city. He didn't go inside. He stood outside, checking his watch. Then, a woman in a bright red coat walked toward him. She smiled. Daniel smiled back. They hugged. Not like old friends. Not like coworkers. Like two people deeply in love. Emma felt tears fill her eyes. But she didn't move. She simply watched. The woman laughed at something Daniel whispered. Then, without hesitation, he held her hand. Together, they walked into the cafe. Emma remained frozen behind the steering wheel. Everything inside her screamed to confront them. Instead, she remembered her grandmother's words again. "Watch first. Speak later." She picked up her phone and quietly took several photographs through the windshield. An hour passed. When Daniel finally left the cafe, he kissed the woman goodbye. Emma's heart shattered. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times. None of those nightmares hurt as much as reality. Daniel drove away. But Emma didn't follow him. She followed the woman instead. The woman entered a small apartment building on Maple Street. Emma parked nearby and waited. A few minutes later, an elderly neighbor stepped outside to water her flowers. Emma walked over with a friendly smile. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm looking for someone." The woman smiled warmly. "Who are you trying to find?" Emma pointed discreetly toward the apartment. "The lady in the red coat." "Oh, Sophia." Emma's stomach tightened. "Yes." The neighbor chuckled. "She's very kind. Does she live alone?" The elderly woman shook her head. "No. She lives with her little boy." Emma blinked. "Her son?" "Yes. He's such a sweet child. Looks just like his father." Emma's pulse quickened. "Do you know his father's name?" The neighbor smiled. "Of course. It's Daniel." Emma felt the world stop. "No." The woman continued talking, unaware of the devastation she had just caused. "They're such a lovely little family. They've lived here for almost 3 years." Emma could barely breathe. A little family. 3 years. Daniel hadn't just been having an affair. He had built another home. Another life. Another family. Emma drove away in silence. She pulled into an empty parking lot and finally allowed herself to cry. Not because Daniel had lied, but because every promise he had ever made now felt meaningless. After several minutes, she wiped away her tears. This isn't over. She opened the folder of evidence on her phone. Photos, messages, locations, dates. Then she noticed something strange. One photograph from Daniel's hidden phone caught her attention. It showed Daniel and Sophia standing in front of a large white house. Across the gate was a bronze sign that read, Harrington Estate. Emma frowned. She had never heard Daniel mention that place. Curious, she searched the name online. The estate wasn't a home. It belonged to the powerful Harrington Foundation, a private organization known for hosting exclusive business events. Why would Daniel and Sophia be there together? He had told Emma he had never even visited the foundation. Another lie, or something much bigger. Just then, Emma's phone rang. The caller ID displayed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello!" A calm male voice spoke. "If you want to know the truth about your husband." There was a brief pause. "Stop following Sophia." Emma's blood ran cold. The caller continued. "She's not the secret." Then the line went dead. Emma stared at the phone in disbelief. Someone knew she was investigating. Someone was watching her, and according to that mysterious caller, Sophia wasn't the biggest secret. She was only the beginning. The truth behind the gate. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the anonymous phone call. Sophia isn't the secret. Those 4 words echoed in her mind all night. If another woman and a hidden child weren't the biggest lie, then what was? She knew one thing for certain. Someone was watching her. The next morning, Emma acted as if everything was normal. She made breakfast. She smiled at Daniel. She even asked about his day. Daniel looked relieved. "I'll be working late again tonight," he said while buttoning his jacket. Emma nodded calmly. "No problem." He kissed her goodbye and left the house. The moment his car disappeared, Emma whispered, "Let's see where you're really going." Instead of following Daniel this time, Emma drove straight to the Harrington estate. The property was enormous. Tall iron gates surrounded acres of beautifully maintained gardens. Luxury cars entered through the private entrance, while security guards carefully checked every visitor. Emma parked across the road and watched. After nearly an hour, Daniel's SUV arrived. A guard opened the gate without asking for identification. Daniel wasn't just a visitor. He was expected. Emma quickly took several photographs. Just as she was about to leave, someone knocked on her car window. She jumped. Standing outside was an elderly man in a security uniform. His name badge read, "Thomas, you've been sitting here a long time," he said politely. Emma forced a smile. "I'm just waiting for someone." Thomas looked at her for a moment. Then he quietly slipped a small envelope through the open window. "You're looking in the wrong direction," he whispered. Before Emma could ask a single question, he walked away. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Daniel standing beside an elegant older woman in front of the Harrington estate. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "Don't trust what you see. Trust what you can prove." There was also a key, a tiny silver locker key. Attached to it was a handwritten note, "Locker 217, Central Station." Emma's heart raced. Who had left this for her? And why? That afternoon, Emma arrived at the city's central train station. She found Locker 217 hidden in a quiet hallway. Taking a deep breath, she inserted the key. The lock clicked open. Inside was a brown envelope. It contained copies of financial documents, a USB flash drive, several photographs of Daniel meeting unknown people, and one handwritten letter. Emma unfolded it. "If you're reading this, it means you've started asking questions. Your husband isn't simply having an affair. He has been living under another identity. Everything you've discovered so far is only part of the truth. If you want answers, don't confront him. Watch the flash drive first." Emma immediately plugged the flash drive into her laptop after returning home. A video appeared. The recording had been made by a hidden security camera. Daniel entered a private meeting room inside the Harrington estate. A few moments later, 3 well-dressed men joined him. One of them placed a thick file on the table. Another slid a passport across to Daniel. The passport had a different name. David Miller. Emma stared at the screen in disbelief. Different name. Different identity. Then she heard Daniel say something that made her blood run cold. "When this is over, Emma must never know who I really am." Emma's hands began to shake. What did he mean? Who was he? Was Daniel Parker even his real name? Before she could replay the video, the lights in her house suddenly went out. Everything went dark. Her laptop battery died. The entire neighborhood still had electricity. Only her house was black. A loud knock echoed from the front door. Then another. Slow. Heavy. Someone was outside. Emma looked through the peephole. No one. She unlocked the door slightly. The porch was empty. Only a small package rested on the welcome mat. She carefully picked it up and brought it inside. There was no sender's name. Inside the box was a single burner phone. It rang the moment she turned it on. With trembling hands, Emma answered. The same calm male voice spoke again. "I told you not to follow Sophia." Emma gathered her courage. "Who are you?" A brief silence. Then he replied, "I'm the only reason you're still alive." The line went dead. At that exact moment, Emma heard a car pull into the driveway. She looked through the window. Daniel was home, much earlier than expected. But he wasn't alone. The woman in the red coat, Sophia, stepped out of the passenger seat. Together, they walked toward Emma's front door. Emma realized this was no coincidence. Whatever happened next, her life was about to change forever. The woman at my door. Emma's heart pounded so hard she could hear it. She stood frozen behind the living room curtains as Daniel and Sophia walked toward the front door together. What is she doing here? Emma whispered. 1,000 terrible thoughts raced through her mind. Had Daniel discovered she was investigating him? Had Sophia come to confront her? Or was this the moment everything would finally fall apart? The doorbell rang. Once. Then again. Emma took a deep breath and opened the door. Daniel smiled nervously. Emma! We need to talk. Before Emma could answer, Sophia stepped forward. She looked just as frightened. I know this is impossible to understand, Sophia said softly, but please just let me explain. Emma laughed bitterly. Explain? You've been with my husband for 3 years. What exactly is there to explain? Sophia lowered her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. Emma's voice cracked. You already did. Daniel stepped between them. Emma, please. No! Emma shouted. 4 years, I believed every lie you told me. I defended you. I trusted you. And all this time, you were living another life. The room fell silent. Then Daniel quietly said something Emma never expected. I never wanted to marry either of you. Emma stared at him in disbelief. What? Sophia looked just as shocked. Daniel closed his eyes. Neither of you knows the truth. Emma folded her arms. Then tell me. Daniel looked toward the windows, making sure no one was outside. Then he locked the front door. His hands were shaking. My real name isn't Daniel Parker. Emma felt her stomach drop. He continued. My real name is David Miller. Emma remembered the passport she had seen on the flash drive. It was real. Daniel, or David, continued speaking. 10 years ago, I worked undercover for a federal investigative agency. I was assigned to infiltrate a powerful criminal organization that launders money through international businesses. Emma's anger slowly turned into confusion. What does that have to do with us? David looked at Sophia. Everything. Sophia wiped away a tear. I wasn't his mistress. Emma frowned. What? Sophia took a deep breath. I've been working undercover too. Emma stared at her. No. Sophia nodded. We've been pretending to be a couple. The little boy you saw. He's my nephew. Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. So the messages, the photographs, the hotel bookings, they were all part of our cover. Emma looked at David. Then why did you lie to me? His eyes filled with regret. Because if anyone discovered the truth, they wouldn't just kill me. They'd kill you too. Emma's emotions were all over the place. Part of her wanted to believe him. Another part remembered every lonely night she had spent waiting for him. If this is true, she said quietly, prove it. David reached into his jacket pocket. He removed a metal badge, an official identification card, then a sealed government file. Emma carefully opened it. Inside were classified mission reports. Her husband's photograph. The name. Agent David Miller. Everything matched the flash drive. Everything. Emma looked at him. So none of this was real. David shook his head. My love for you was. The lies weren't. Emma didn't know what to feel. Relief. Anger. Confusion. All at once. Before anyone could say another word, the burner phone on Emma's table began ringing. Everyone froze. Emma answered. The familiar voice spoke urgently. They know David is with you. David's face turned pale. The caller continued. You have less than 5 minutes. Then the line disconnected. Almost immediately, the sound of tires screeching echoed outside. David rushed to the window. 3 black SUVs stopped in front of the house. Armed men stepped out. Sophia whispered. They found us. David grabbed Emma's hand. We have to leave. Emma looked at him. Who are they? David's expression turned deadly serious. The people I've been trying to expose for the last 10 years. The front door suddenly shook with a powerful bang. Someone was trying to force it open. Another crash. The frame splintered. David looked at Emma. I know you have every reason to hate me. But if you stay here, you won't survive the night. The door burst open. Masked men flooded into the house. David pushed Emma behind the kitchen counter. Run! A gunshot shattered the living room window. The nightmare had only just begun. The man who knew everything. The first gunshot shattered the living room window. Glass exploded across the floor. Emma screamed as David pulled her behind the kitchen island. "Stay down!" he shouted. Sophia grabbed a heavy chair and shoved it against the back door. The masked men forced their way into the house. Furniture crashed. Footsteps echoed through the hallway. David looked at Emma. "There's a hidden exit through the basement." Emma stared at him. "A hidden exit? I built it years ago, just in case this day ever came." Another loud bang shook the house. The front door finally gave way. "They're inside," Sophia whispered. David led Emma through the basement door while Sophia stayed behind for a few seconds, locking the inner entrance. Together, they disappeared into a narrow underground passage that led into the woods behind the neighborhood. Behind them, flames began to rise from the house. The attackers had set it on fire. Emma looked back with tears in her eyes. "My home!" David squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry. I promised to protect you. Instead, I destroyed your life." 40 minutes later, they reached an abandoned fishing cabin beside a quiet lake. Waiting outside was an older man in his 60s. Gray hair, calm eyes, a weathered leather jacket. David stopped. "So, you finally came." The man smiled. "I was beginning to think you'd never make it." Emma looked from one man to the other. "Who is he?" David answered quietly. "This is Michael Grant." Emma frowned. "The man who kept calling me?" Michael nodded. "Yes." Emma's expression hardened. "You've been watching me." "I had to. If I hadn't, you would have been dead the day you followed Sophia." Emma folded her arms. "Then stop speaking in riddles. Tell me the truth." "Mikhailsite, I've been protecting you from the very people David has been hunting." Inside the cabin, Michael spread several files across an old wooden table. Maps, photographs, bank records, newspaper clippings. Emma noticed one familiar face. Richard Harrington, the billionaire owner of the Harrington Foundation. The same estate where she had followed David. Michael pointed to the photograph. "Everything leads back to him." Emma remembered the elegant mansion. "The charity foundation?" Michael laughed bitterly. "That's only what the public sees. In reality, it's the headquarters of one of the most powerful criminal networks in the country." David added, "They use charities, businesses, and international investments to hide billions of dollars. And for 10 years, I've been trying to gather enough evidence to expose them." Emma finally understood. The late nights, the lies, the second phone. Sophia, none of it had been random. "But why marry me?" Emma asked softly. David looked down. "Because I wasn't supposed to fall in love. My assignment required me to build a normal public life. It made my undercover identity believable." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "So, our marriage started as part of your mission?" David nodded slowly. "Yes." A painful silence filled the room. Then he continued, "But somewhere along the way, it became real. I loved you. I still do." Emma turned away. She wanted to believe him, but the truth hurt too much. How could she separate the lies from the love? Just then, Michael opened another folder. "This is why they attacked tonight." Inside was a photograph taken only 3 days earlier. Richard Harrington was shaking hands with a senior government official. Behind them stood several powerful business leaders. Michael pointed to a date written across the bottom. "Tomorrow night." David frowned. "What happens tomorrow?" Michael answered with a grim expression. "They're holding a private meeting. The final phase of their operation begins." Emma looked confused. "What operation?" Michael slid one last photograph across the table. It showed a massive underground vault beneath the Harrington estate. Stacks of servers, encrypted computers, millions of confidential financial records. If they activate those servers, they'll erase every piece of evidence against them. David's face turned pale. "Then tomorrow is our last chance." Suddenly, the cabin lights flickered. Michael immediately reached for his radio. Static. Nothing else. David quietly looked through the window. Headlights. At least 6 black SUVs were driving toward the lake. Emma whispered, "They found us again." Michael nodded. There was only one person who knew about this cabin. David slowly turned toward him. Their eyes met. Michael's expression changed. Realization. Fear. Then guilt. Someone had betrayed them. But it wasn't Sophia. It wasn't Emma. And it wasn't David. Michael slowly lowered his head and whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't know they were following me." Before anyone could react, A sniper's bullet shattered the cabin window. The glass exploded inward. Michael collapsed to the floor. Emma screamed. David rushed to help him. With his final breath, Michael grabbed David's wrist and whispered, "Don't trust." He coughed blood. The director. His hand fell still. Outside, armed men surrounded the cabin. David looked at Emma. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with determination. The man behind all of this has finally stepped out of the shadows. The hunt was no longer about survival. It was about exposing the one person powerful enough to destroy every life they had ever known. The director, Michael Grant, lay motionless on the cabin floor. Outside, the sound of footsteps grew louder. Flashlights swept across the windows. The attackers were closing in. David grabbed Michael's laptop and a sealed envelope from the table. "We have to move. Now." Emma looked at the body. "We can't just leave him." David's voice was heavy. "If we stay another minute, we'll be joining him." Sophia opened the back door. "The boat is still there." The three of them ran through the woods toward the lake as gunshots echoed behind them. Moments later, they climbed into a small fishing boat and disappeared into the thick morning fog. An hour later, they reached an abandoned warehouse near the river. David finally opened the envelope Michael had protected with his life. Inside was a single photograph. Emma frowned. It showed David standing beside a much older man during his graduation from the Federal Academy. The back of the photograph had one sentence written in black ink. "The director recruited you for a reason." Emma looked confused. "Who is he?" David stared silently at the picture. Then he whispered, "His name is Jonathan Pierce. He was my mentor, the man who taught me everything." Sophia's face turned pale. "The director?" David nodded slowly. "I never imagined." Emma couldn't understand. "You mean the man leading the criminal network is the same man who recruited you to stop it?" David closed his eyes. "Yes, and if that's true, I've been playing his game from the very beginning." The room fell silent. Every mission, every late night, every dangerous assignment, everything had been controlled by one man. Sophia inserted Michael's laptop into a projector. A password screen appeared. David typed Michael's birthday. The laptop unlocked. Hundreds of classified files appeared. One folder stood out. Project Mirror. David opened it. Inside were confidential government reports, surveillance photos, and undercover personnel files. Emma gasped. David's photograph was there. So was Sophia's. And then, Emma's. She stared at the screen. "Why am I in these files?" David clicked on her profile. His blood ran cold. Subject, Emma Parker. Status, unaware asset. Risk level, high. Surveillance period, 8 years. Emma stepped back. "They've been watching me since before we were married." David nodded in disbelief. "This wasn't just about me. They chose you too." Suddenly, another document caught Sophia's attention. It was titled, Phase 4, Family Protocol. David opened it. His hands began to shake. The document explained everything. The organization deliberately forced undercover agents to build families, not for protection, but for control. If an agent ever tried to expose the network, his family became leverage. Emma looked at David. "So our marriage was part of their plan?" David's voice cracked. "It started that way, but loving you was never part of their plan." Before anyone could speak, the warehouse doors slowly opened. A single black luxury car drove inside. No guards, no weapons, just one man stepping out. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, silver hair, calm eyes. Jonathan Pierce, the director. He smiled as if greeting old friends. "David, it's been a long time." David raised his pistol. "Don't come any closer." Jonathan ignored the warning. "I didn't come here to fight. I came to make you an offer." Emma whispered, "Don't listen to him." Jonathan looked directly at her. "You must be Emma. I've heard so much about you." Emma felt a chill run through her body. Jonathan continued calmly, "You think David was lying to you. But he wasn't. He simply never knew the whole truth." David's eyes narrowed. "What truth?" Jonathan smiled. "The truth about why you were really recruited." He reached into his briefcase and placed a thick file on the floor. "You weren't chosen because you were the best agent. You were chosen because your father built this organization." David froze. What? Jonathan nodded. You inherited it. The moment your father disappeared, you became its rightful leader. Emma looked at David in disbelief. This has to be a lie. Jonathan shrugged. Read the file. It contains your birth records, your father's journals, and every answer you've spent 10 years searching for. David slowly picked up the file. His hands trembled. Everything he believed about his life was beginning to collapse. Jonathan turned toward the warehouse exit. I'll give you 24 hours. Join me, or spend the rest of your life running. He got back into the car and drove away without looking back. Silence filled the warehouse. Emma looked at David. Tell me he's lying. David opened the file. The first page contained an old family photograph. His father, his mother, and standing beside them, a young Jonathan Pierce. They weren't strangers. They were family friends. David closed the file. For the first time in 10 years, he didn't know who he really was, and somewhere in the shadows, the countdown to Jonathan's 24-hour deadline had already begun. The choice that changed everything. The warehouse was silent. Emma watched David sitting alone in the corner, staring at the file Jonathan Pierce had left behind. 4 hours, he didn't say a word. Finally, Emma walked over and sat beside him. Have you opened it? David nodded. I wish I hadn't. Emma gently placed her hand over his. Tell me. David took a deep breath and opened the file. Inside were old family photographs, handwritten letters, and government records dating back more than 25 years. One yellowed letter caught Emma's attention. It was written by David's father. David began reading aloud. If you're reading this, it means I have failed. I never wanted this life for you. I joined the organization believing I could destroy it from within. Instead, it destroyed everything I loved. If Jonathan ever tells you that this empire belongs to you, don't believe him. It belongs to no one. It must end. Emma looked at David. So your father wasn't a criminal? David shook his head. He was undercover. Just like me. Sophia entered the room carrying a laptop. I found something. She projected a map onto the wall. It showed the Harrington estate. Red markers appeared across the property. The organization is gathering everyone tomorrow night. Emma frowned. For what? Sophia zoomed in on the main building. Jonathan had scheduled a secret meeting with the remaining members of the network. One note stood out. Operation Legacy. David stared at the screen. He's expecting me. Emma looked at him. You're not actually thinking of going, are you? David smiled sadly. I have to. If I don't, he'll disappear forever. The next evening, David arrived at the Harrington estate alone. Emma, Sophia, and Detective Marcus Hale waited in a surveillance van hidden in the nearby woods. Marcus adjusted his headset. Remember the plan? No heroics. David nodded. I'll signal you when I have enough evidence. He walked through the estate's massive front doors. Jonathan Pierce greeted him with a warm smile. I knew you'd come. David looked around. Dozens of influential guests filled the grand ballroom. Business leaders, lawyers, politicians, powerful people who publicly appeared respectable. Jonathan quietly whispered, They're the real owners of this empire. David noticed hidden cameras recording everything. Servers filled with confidential files lined the basement below. Jonathan wasn't just running a criminal network. He had built an empire of influence. As the meeting began, Jonathan stepped onto a stage. He raised a glass. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, we welcome the next generation. He looked directly at David. My successor. The room erupted into applause. Emma watched through the hidden camera feed. No, she whispered. David remained perfectly still. Jonathan handed him a sealed folder. All you have to do is sign. David opened it. Instead of a contract, he found photographs of Emma, taken only hours earlier. She was leaving a grocery store, walking through a park, standing outside the warehouse. Jonathan smiled. You see, I always know where the people I care about are. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. David's hands tightened around the folder. You've been following her. Jonathan's smile disappeared. I've been protecting my investment. At that exact moment, Emma noticed something strange on the surveillance monitor. A maintenance worker was quietly placing black cases beneath the ballroom stage. She zoomed in. Her heart stopped. Marcus! Those aren't equipment cases. Marcus looked closer. His face turned pale. Explosives. Jonathan wasn't holding a meeting. He was preparing to erase every witness, everyone inside the estate, including David. Emma grabbed the radio. "David! Get out of there!" But before the message reached him, Jonathan looked at his watch, then calmly pressed a small remote control. A loud countdown echoed through the ballroom. 10. The guests looked around in confusion. 9. David realized what was happening. Jonathan smiled one last time. "If I can't control the future, no one will." The countdown continued. 8, 7, 6. Emma threw open the van door and sprinted toward the estate. Marcus and Sophia ran behind her. Inside the ballroom, David looked around at hundreds of innocent people. He had only seconds to make an impossible choice. Save himself, or risk everything to save everyone else. The countdown reached 5. 30 seconds to truth. The digital countdown echoed through the grand ballroom. 5. Guests looked around, confused. Some laughed, believing it was part of Jonathan Pierce's presentation. David knew better. He had seen this tactic before. Panic spreads faster than danger. He grabbed the microphone from the stage. "Everyone, listen to me." No one moved. Jonathan stood at the back of the room, smiling calmly. "You still think they'll believe you?" he asked. David ignored him. "There are explosive devices in this building. Leave now." For a moment, the ballroom was silent. Then someone screamed. Within seconds, hundreds of people rushed toward the exits. Chairs crashed to the floor. Glasses shattered. The elegant ballroom turned into complete chaos. Outside, Emma, Marcus, and Sophia reached the front entrance. Security guards tried to stop them. Marcus held up his badge. "Federal investigation." "Move!" The guard stepped aside as frightened guests poured out of the building. Emma searched every face. "Where's David?" She couldn't see him. Inside, David wasn't running. He was searching. Jonathan had disappeared. The countdown continued. 24 seconds remaining. David raced through the underground corridors beneath the estate. He finally found Jonathan standing inside the control room, surrounded by computer servers. "Calm as ever." "You could have escaped," Jonathan said. David answered, "So could you." Jonathan smiled. "I built this empire. I won't abandon it." David noticed a red detonator on the control desk. Jonathan rested one hand on it. "One press, and every secret dies with me." David slowly stepped forward. "It doesn't have to end this way." Jonathan laughed. "You still believe in justice. I believe in survival." Meanwhile, Sophia reached the security room. She quickly connected her laptop to the estate's network. Rows of encrypted files filled the screen. Financial crimes, bribery records, secret identities, international transactions. Emma looked over her shoulder. "This is everything." Sophia nodded. "If I can upload these files, the whole world will know." Marcus locked the door. "You've got one chance." Jonathan looked at David. "You know why I chose you." David remained silent. Jonathan continued, "Because you were never driven by money. You were driven by loyalty. And loyal people are easy to control." David slowly shook his head. "Not anymore." 15 seconds. Jonathan suddenly reached for the detonator. David lunged across the desk. The two men struggled. The remote slipped from Jonathan's hand and slid across the floor. Jonathan punched David. David crashed into a row of servers. Sparks flew. The control room lights flickered. Jonathan grabbed the detonator again. Just as he was about to press the button, Emma burst into the room. "David!" Jonathan turned. That single moment of distraction was enough. David tackled him. The detonator flew into the air. Marcus caught it. Everyone froze. Marcus looked at the blinking display. 8 seconds. There has to be an override. Sophia searched the control panel frantically. "I found it." She typed a long security code. Nothing happened. 5 seconds. Jonathan laughed. "You're too late." Sophia closed her eyes. Then she remembered something David had once told her. The strongest passwords aren't numbers. They're memories. She typed one final word. "Hope." The screen flashed green. System disarmed. The countdown stopped. Silence. For the first time in years, Jonathan Pierce looked genuinely afraid. But the danger wasn't over. Every monitor in the control room suddenly switched on. A live news broadcast filled the screens. Reporters were already covering the evacuation. Helicopters circled overhead. Police tactical units surrounded the estate. The building was completely sealed. Jonathan looked at David. "You've won this battle." He smiled faintly. "But you'll never destroy what I built." David quietly picked up a small black drive from the control desk. "What if I already have?" Jonathan's smile disappeared. The drive contained every secret, every account, every powerful name connected to the organization. Years of corruption. Years of hidden crimes. Emma stared at the tiny device. "This is the evidence we've been looking for." Marcus nodded. "With this, the entire network falls." Jonathan lowered his head. For the first time, he realized there was no escape. Outside, the sound of approaching police grew louder. David looked at Emma. "It ends tonight." Emma squeezed his hand. "No." She smiled through her tears. "It ends with the truth." The control room doors burst open. Armed officers flooded inside. Jonathan Pierce slowly raised his hands. The man who had manipulated lives for decades had finally run out of moves. But as one officer reached for the black drive, a hidden alarm suddenly activated. The computer screens flashed one final warning. Data deletion initiated. Every file in the organization was about to erase itself forever. David had one final chance to save the truth, and only seconds remained. The truth that set us free. The control room filled with the sound of alarms. Every computer screen flashed the same warning in bright red letters. Data deletion initiated. A digital timer appeared. 2 o'clock, 1:59, 1:58, 2 minutes. That was all they had before. Decades of evidence disappeared forever. David turned to Sophia. "Can you stop it?" She stared at the screens, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. "I don't know. It's protected by military-grade encryption." Jonathan Pierce smiled, even as officers placed him in handcuffs. "I told you. If I fall, so does every secret." David looked him in the eyes. "Not today." Sophia connected the black drive to the main server. Lines of code raced across the screen. Emma stood beside her, watching the timer. 1:21. Marcus ordered the officers to secure every exit. "No one leaves this building." The room fell silent except for the sound of keyboards and the countdown. Sophia suddenly stopped typing. Her face turned pale. "I can't stop the deletion." Emma's heart sank. "What do you mean?" Sophia looked at David. "I can't stop it, but I can copy it." David immediately understood. "We don't need their servers. We only need the truth." Sophia nodded. She redirected every file to the black drive. The progress bar slowly began to move. 12%. Jonathan laughed. "The drive doesn't have enough space." Sophia smiled. "It doesn't need to." She had quietly connected it to secure government servers through an encrypted satellite link. Every file was being copied live. Jonathan's smile disappeared. "What have you done?" Sophia answered without looking up. "I made sure the truth can never be erased again." The timer reached 0:32. The progress bar showed 81%. Emma closed her eyes. "Please, come on." David squeezed her hand. "It'll make it." The room held its breath. 92%, 96%, 99%. Then, 100% complete. At that exact second, every computer inside the control center went dark. The original servers erased themselves forever. Jonathan smiled for only a moment, until Marcus held up the black drive. The evidence survived. For the first time in decades, Jonathan Pierce looked defeated. The weeks that followed changed the country. The evidence exposed one of the largest criminal conspiracies in modern history. Corrupt executives, powerful financiers, government officials, international money laundering networks. Hundreds of arrests followed. News channels around the world covered the story. Jonathan Pierce was sentenced to life imprisonment. Every member of his organization was brought to justice. The Harrington Foundation was dissolved. Its stolen assets were redirected to charities and public programs. David resigned from undercover service. After 10 years of living behind lies, he no longer wanted another false identity. One quiet afternoon, he returned to the empty lot where his house had once stood. Only ashes remained. Emma walked over and stood beside him. "For a long time, I thought you destroyed our marriage." David lowered his eyes. "I almost did." Emma reached into her pocket and held out a small object. It was their wedding ring. She had carried it with her through every lie, every fear, and every unanswered question. "I can't erase what happened," she said softly. "Neither can I," David replied. "But maybe," she smiled, "we don't have to erase it. We just have to stop letting it define us." David slipped the ring back onto her finger. This time, there were no secrets, no hidden phones, no fake names, only the truth. 1 year later, a small house overlooked a quiet lake. Emma had written a best-selling book about resilience, trust, and finding strength after betrayal. David taught young investigators how to work undercover without losing themselves. Sophia became the head of a national witness protection program. Marcus was promoted to director of major crimes. Their scars remained, but they were no longer wounds. They were reminders of everything they had survived. One evening, a journalist interviewed Emma on the porch of her new home. "After everything you've been through," he asked, "what's the greatest lesson you've learned?" Emma looked toward David, who was planting flowers in the garden. She smiled. "I used to believe that love meant never asking questions." She paused. "Now I know that real love can survive the truth, but it cannot survive lies." The journalist nodded. "And what would you say to someone who thinks their world has fallen apart?" Emma looked into the distance as the sun slowly set. "The truth may break your heart, but it also gives you the chance to rebuild your life." She took David's hand. Together, they walked toward their home. For the first time in many years, neither of them was running from the past. They were finally walking toward the future. The end.